The thunder cracked across the darkened sky as Daisy Taylor clutched her tattered shawl tighter around her shoulders, her footsteps leaving desperate impressions in the mud as she fled through the rain-soaked streets of Silvercreek, Arizona. It was 1875, and tonight she was running for her life. Victor Blackstone's angry voice still echoed in her ears, his proposal-turned threat still burning in her memory. "You'll be my wife, Daisy Taylor, or you'll be nothing at all," he had snarled, his handsome face twisting into something monstrous when she had refused him for the final time. Daisy had always known Victor was dangerous. The wealthy mine owner had a reputation for getting what he wanted, by any means necessary. But she hadn't expected him to come at her with violence, hadn't anticipated the murderous gleam in his eye when she stood her ground. The bruise forming on her cheek was evidence enough of what life as Mrs. Blackstone would have entailed. She darted between two buildings, her soaked dress hampering her movements. The rain had been a blessing in disguise, washing away her tracks almost as quickly as she made them. But she couldn't run forever. Not in a town where Victor Blackstone's money spoke louder than any woman's plea for help. As she reached the edge of town, despair threatened to overwhelm her. Where could she go? Who would believe her over the richest man in the territory? Her family was back east, too far to reach without money or transportation. The distant sound of hoofbeats made her heart lurch painfully in her chest. Victor would have men searching every inch of Silvercreek by now. "Miss, you all right there?" A deep voice called out softly from the shadows. Daisy spun around, nearly losing her footing in the mud. A tall figure sat atop a horse, his face obscured by the brim of his hat and the darkness of the night. Her hand immediately went to the small knife concealed in her pocket, the only protection she had managed to grab in her hasty escape. "Stay back," she warned, her voice steadier than she felt. The figure dismounted with practiced ease, keeping a respectful distance. "Name's Sloane, madam. Don't mean you any harm." He stepped forward just enough for a flash of lightning to illuminate his face, rugged, weathered by the elements, but with kind eyes that held no malice. "But you look like you might be in some trouble." "I'm fine," Daisy lied, even as another roll of thunder made her flinch. Sloane tilted his head slightly, taking in her disheveled appearance, the bruise forming on her cheek and the way her eyes kept darting back toward town. "Someone's after you," he stated simply. It wasn't a question. Daisy hesitated, weighing her options. Trust this stranger or face Victor's wrath alone. Neither choice seemed wise, but one at least offered a chance. "Victor Blackstone," she admitted finally. "I refused his marriage proposal." Adam's expression darkened immediately. "Blackstone," he repeated, the name sounding like a curse on his lips. "That explains plenty. Man thinks he owns everything and everyone in these parts." The sound of voices and horses grew closer, causing Daisy to look desperately for somewhere to hide. Adam made a quick decision. "I've got a ranch about 10 miles west of here. You'd be safe there while you figure things out." He held out his hand, steady and sure. "But we need to move now if you want to stay ahead of them." Daisy hesitated only a moment before taking his hand. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." A grim smile crossed Adam's face as he helped her onto his horse. "Let's just say Blackstone and I have our history, and I never could abide a man who'd raise his hand to a woman." As they rode into the stormy night, Daisy clung to the waist of this stranger, this cowboy who had appeared like an answer to an unspoken prayer. She didn't know if she could trust him, but for now, he was her only hope. The rain continued to fall, washing away their tracks as they disappeared into the darkness, the lights of Silvercreek growing distant behind them. Adam's ranch was modest but well kept, nestled in a small valley surrounded by rugged hills that provided natural protection from the elements and unwanted visitors. By the time they arrived, the storm had lessened to a steady drizzle, and the first hints of dawn were lightening the eastern sky. "It ain't much," Adam said as he helped Daisy down from his horse, "but it's safe. Blackstone's influence doesn't reach this far." Daisy looked around at the sturdy cabin with its small porch, the barn and corral nearby, all of it speaking of hard work and simple living. "It's lovely," she said sincerely. Inside, Adam lit a lamp and stoked the embers in the fireplace until a warm glow filled the main room. "You should get out of those wet clothes before you catch your death," he said, moving to a trunk near the wall. "I don't have much that would fit you, but there's a clean shirt here that might work as a nightgown for now. Bathroom's through there if you want to clean up." Daisy accepted the offered shirt gratefully. "Thank you, Mr. Sloane. I don't know how I'll ever repay your kindness." "Adam," he corrected gently. "And there's no debt. Anyone with a conscience would have done the same." But Daisy knew better. In her 24 years of life, she had learned that genuine kindness without expectation of return was rare indeed, especially from men. After washing away the mud and changing into Adam's shirt, which hung down past her knees, Daisy emerged to find him placing a mug of hot coffee and a plate of simple food on the table. "Eat something," he encouraged. "Then you should get some rest. You can take my bed, I'll bunk down out here." "I couldn't possibly." "You can and you will," Adam insisted, his tone gentle but firm. "You've been through enough tonight. Sleep as long as you need." Exhaustion finally catching up with her, Daisy didn't argue further. The bed was comfortable, the sheets clean and smelling faintly of soap and open air. Despite her fear and uncertainty, sleep claimed her quickly. When she awoke, the sun was high in the sky. For a disorienting moment, she didn't recognize her surroundings. Then the events of the previous night came rushing back: Victor's rage, her desperate flight, and the cowboy who had come to her rescue. She found Adam outside, mending a section of fence. He straightened when he saw her, pushing his hat back on his forehead. "You look better," he observed. "Figured you needed the rest." "Thank you," Daisy said, suddenly conscious of her appearance in his borrowed shirt and her crumpled dress folded over her arm. I should figure out what to do next." Adam nodded thoughtfully. "First things first, my nearest neighbor is the widow Jenkins. She's about your size, might be willing to lend you some clothes until we can get yours washed and mended." "I can't impose, it's no imposition. Martha Jenkins loves company and she's no friend of Blackstone either." His expression turned serious. "Speaking of which, we should talk about him. Blackstone ain't the type to let things go. What exactly happened between you two?" Daisy sighed, leaning against the porch railing. "I came west 6 months ago to teach at the schoolhouse in Silvercreek. Victor, Mr. Blackstone, took an interest in me almost immediately. At first I was flattered he's wealthy, respected in town, but then I started hearing stories." "About his temper," Adam supplied. Daisy nodded. "About what happened to his last wife. The official story was that she fell down the stairs, but—" She shuddered. "I began to decline his invitations. He didn't take it well, became more insistent. Last night he proposed, if you can call it that. When I refused, he—" Her hand unconsciously went to her cheek where the bruise had darkened overnight. Adam's jaw tightened. "And no one in town stepped in to help." "The sheriff is Victor's cousin," Daisy explained bitterly. "And even those who might have sympathized are too afraid to cross him. He owns the mine that employs half the men in town." "Sounds about right," Adam muttered. "Blackstone's made a career out of intimidation and fear. I've had my own run-ins with him." "Is that why you live so far from town?" A shadow crossed Adam's face. "Part of it. Let's just say Blackstone and I have unfinished business." He changed the subject. "You hungry? I'm not much of a cook, but I can manage eggs and bacon." Over a simple but satisfying breakfast, they continued to talk. Daisy learned that Adam had been ranching in the area for 5 years, that he preferred the solitude and peace of his valley to the complications of town life. He didn't volunteer much about his past, and Daisy didn't press, respecting his privacy as he had respected hers. "What will you do now?" Adam asked finally. "You're welcome to stay here until things settle, but I reckon a schoolteacher has responsibilities." Daisy's heart sank at the reminder. "I can't go back to Silvercreek, not with Victor there, but I don't have many options. My family's in Boston, and I barely have enough money for a week at a hotel, let alone a train ticket east. What about another town? There's plenty of settlements that could use a good teacher." "Perhaps," Daisy agreed, though the prospect of starting over again was daunting. "But Victor has connections throughout the territory, and I'd need references from the school board in Silvercreek, which he practically controls." Adam considered this, his blue eyes thoughtful. "Well, you don't need to figure it all out today. For now, let's get you some proper clothes and take things one step at a time." Martha Jenkins turned out to be a blessing Daisy hadn't anticipated. The widow, a robust woman in her 50s with a no-nonsense manner and kind eyes, welcomed them warmly to her small homestead, a few miles from Adam's ranch. "So Blackstone's showing his true colors again, is he?" Martha said after hearing a simplified version of Daisy's situation. "Can't say I'm surprised. That man's been getting away with too much for too long." She bustled around her cabin, pulling out dresses and other essentials. "These should fit you well enough. Was saving them for my niece's visit next month, but she can make do with what I've got left." "I couldn't possibly," Daisy began, but Martha waved away her protest. "Nonsense. Women have to stick together out here. Besides," she added with a wink at Adam, "it does my heart good to see this lone wolf finally bringing a lady friend around." Adam's ears reddened noticeably. "It's not like that, Martha." "MMHMM," the widow hummed skeptically. "Well, whatever it is or isn't, you two be careful. Blackstone's not one to give up easily when he sets his mind on something." As they rode back to Adam's ranch, Daisy clutched the bundle of borrowed clothes, feeling both grateful and increasingly worried. "She's right, you know. By helping me, you're putting yourself in danger." Adam's response was matter of fact. "Wouldn't be the first time Blackstone and I have butted heads. I can handle myself. But this is my problem, not yours. Way I see it, standing up to bullies is everybody's problem." He glanced at her, his expression softening slightly. "Besides, I've got plenty of space and could use the company. My cooking might drive you away before Blackstone ever becomes an issue." Despite her concerns, Daisy found herself smiling. There was something reassuring about Adam's quiet confidence, his straightforward decency. The next few days settled into an unexpected but comfortable routine. Daisy insisted on earning her keep, taking over the cooking much to Adam's evident relief, and helping with various chores around the ranch. Adam taught her to ride properly, not side saddle as she had learned back east, but astride, the practical way of the West. "You never know when you might need to make a quick getaway," he explained as he adjusted her posture on the gentle mare he'd selected for her. "Out here, riding isn't just recreation, it's survival." Daisy found she enjoyed the lessons, enjoyed the feeling of independence that came with controlling the powerful animal beneath her. Adam was a patient teacher, his hands steady and respectful when he needed to correct her form. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch watching the sunset paint the valley in gold and crimson, or by the fire if the night was cool, talking about everything and nothing. Adam gradually revealed more of himself, how he'd grown up on a ranch in Texas, served briefly in the army during the final days of the Civil War despite his youth, and eventually made his way west seeking a fresh start. "What about you?" he asked one evening as they sat by the fire. "What made a Boston lady decide to brave the wilds of Arizona territory?" Daisy smiled, watching the flames dance. "Adventure, I suppose. A desire to be useful. After my father died, there wasn't much holding me in Boston. My mother had passed years earlier, and my older brother had his own family to worry about. No beau waiting for your return," she laughed softly. "No, I had offers, but—" She hesitated, searching for the right words. "They all seemed to want me to be something I wasn't: quieter, more conventional, content with embroidery and dinner parties." Adam nodded, understanding in his eyes. "And instead, you wanted to shape young minds and explore new frontiers." "Something like that," she agreed. "Though I'm beginning to think my judgment of character needs improvement, considering how I misjudged Victor initially." "Blackstone's good at hiding his true nature when it suits him," Adam said, a hardness entering his voice. "Don't blame yourself for that. You really do hate him, don't you?" Daisy observed. "What happened between you two?" Adam was silent for so long that Daisy thought he might not answer. Then, his voice low, he said, "My sister Abigail came west with me 5 years ago. She was a lot like you: spirited, independent, too trusting sometimes." His hands clenched into fists. "Blackstone courted her, promised her the world. I tried to warn her, but—" He shook his head. "By the time she realized what kind of man he really was, it was too late." Daisy felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. "Was she—" "His first wife," Adam confirmed grimly. "The one who supposedly fell down the stairs." "Oh, Adam," Daisy whispered, horrified, "I'm so sorry." "There wasn't enough evidence to prove anything," he continued, staring into the flames. "Blackstone made sure of that, but I know what happened." "And so does he." Suddenly, his determination to help her made perfect sense. This wasn't just about protecting a stranger, it was about preventing history from repeating itself. "Is that why you stay out here, to keep an eye on him?" Adam nodded slowly. "Partly. Been waiting for the right moment to bring him to justice. But he's careful and powerful. And I promised Abby I wouldn't throw my life away on revenge." Daisy reached out impulsively, placing her hand over his. "Thank you for telling me." He looked down at their joined hands, then met her eyes, something vulnerable and raw in his gaze. "Guess I wanted you to understand why this matters to me. Why you matter." The air between them seemed charged suddenly with unspoken possibilities. For a moment, Daisy thought he might lean closer, that she might let him, but Adam gently withdrew his hand, standing up. "It's getting late," he said, his voice a touch rougher than usual. "We should turn in." That night, Daisy lay awake longer than usual, her thoughts circling around Adam's revelation and the way her heart had quickened when their hands touched. It was dangerous, she knew, this growing attachment to the quiet, honorable cowboy who had taken her in. Dangerous because her situation was still precarious, because Victor Blackstone still loomed like a shadow over both their lives, and because, inevitably, she would need to move on. Yet as she finally drifted off to sleep, it was Adam's face she saw, his quiet strength that gave her comfort in the darkness. The peaceful days on the ranch were shattered a week later when Martha Jenkins arrived in a cloud of dust, her usually composed face tense with worry. "Blackstone's men were at my place this morning," she announced without preamble as Adam helped her down from her wagon. "Asking questions about a woman matching your description, Daisy." Daisy felt the blood drain from her face. "How did they know to look for me there?" "Someone must have talked," Adam said grimly. "Did you tell them anything, Martha?" The widow drew herself up indignantly. "Of course not. Told them I hadn't seen hide nor hair of any schoolteacher, but they didn't believe me. tore through my house, threatened to come back." She shook her head. "They're not giving up, Adam. And they mentioned you specifically said Blackstone figured you might be harboring her." Adam's expression hardened. "So he's connecting the dots." "It's worse than that," Martha continued. "There's a warrant out for Daisy's arrest in Silvercreek. Blackstone's claiming she stole jewelry from his home." "That's absurd," Daisy exclaimed. "I've never even been inside his house." "Doesn't matter," Adam said quietly. "With his cousin as sheriff and his money buying whatever witnesses he needs, that warrant is as good as gospel in these parts." Martha nodded grimly. "And it gives him legal cover to hunt you down." Daisy sank onto the porch steps, her legs suddenly unable to support her. "This is my fault. I've brought this danger to both of you." "Nonsense," Martha said firmly. "Blackstone's the one at fault here, not you." Adam knelt beside Daisy, his eyes serious. "Martha's right, but we do need a plan. You can't stay here much longer. It'll be the first place they search thoroughly once they're done with the neighboring homesteads." "Where can I go?" Daisy asked, despair creeping into her voice. "If there's a warrant, I can't show my face in any town nearby." Adam and Martha exchanged looks, some unspoken communication passing between them. "There might be a way," Martha said slowly. "My late husband's brother runs a stagecoach stop near the territorial border. It's remote, rarely gets visitors from these parts. You could stay there while Adam works on clearing your name, clearing my name." "How?" Adam stood up, determination in every line of his body. "By getting evidence of what Blackstone really is. I've been collecting information for years, accounts from people who have seen his true nature, details about Abby's death. If we can prove he's fabricated these charges against you, the warrant becomes meaningless." "And if we can't?" Daisy asked, voicing the fear they all shared. "Then at least you'll be safe at Jenkins Station until we can arrange passage further east," Martha said practically. "One step at a time, dear." As Martha and Adam discussed logistics, Daisy tried to quiet her racing thoughts. Just when she had begun to feel safe, to feel at home, everything was being upended again. And this time, she wasn't just running for herself, she was concerned for Adam and Martha too. The plan came together quickly. Daisy would leave for Jenkins Station the following night, traveling under cover of darkness with Adam as her guide. Martha would return home and continue to deny any knowledge of Daisy's whereabouts, giving them time to put distance between themselves and Blackstone's men. As Martha prepared to leave, she pulled Daisy aside. "He cares for you, you know," she said softly, nodding toward Adam, who was checking her wagon's wheels. "I haven't seen that look in his eyes since before Abigail died." Daisy felt her cheeks warm. "We barely know each other." Martha's smile was knowing. "Sometimes that doesn't matter. The heart recognizes what it needs." She squeezed Daisy's hand. "Just be careful with him. He's suffered enough." After Martha's departure, an odd tension settled between Adam and Daisy as they prepared for their journey. They moved around each other cautiously, both aware of the danger ahead and the uncertain future it would bring. As evening approached, Adam went to check on the horses while Daisy packed the few belongings she had accumulated. She was carefully folding one of Martha's dresses when Adam appeared in the doorway, his expression grave. "Riders coming," he said quietly. "At least 4 of them, moving fast." Daisy's heart lurched. "Blackstone's men, most likely. We need to move now." He crossed to a chest near the bed, pulling out a rifle and loading it with practiced efficiency. "Take only what you can carry easily. We'll go out the back, through the creek bed. The water will hide our tracks." Fear made her movements clumsy as she stuffed essentials into a small bag. "What about our plan? Martha's brother, still the destination, but we're changing the route." Adam handed her a revolver, smaller than his but still deadly looking. You know how to use this? Daisy stared at the weapon, then shook her head. I've never even held a gun before. His face softened momentarily. It's simple enough. Point and pull the trigger, but it's just a precaution. I don't intend for you to need it. The sound of hooves grew louder as they slipped out the back door of the cabin and made their way to where Adam had already saddled 2 horses. The light was fading, the golden hour of dusk providing just enough visibility to navigate the uneven ground toward the small creek that ran along the edge of Adam's property. They had just reached the tree line when shouts erupted from the direction of the cabin. "They've spotted the fresh tracks," Adam murmured. "Come on." They urged their horses into the shallow water of the creek, following its winding course away from the ranch. The sounds of pursuit grew fainter behind them, but Daisy knew it was only a temporary reprieve. Once Blackstone's men realized they had fled, the hunt would begin in earnest. As night fully descended, they left the creek and struck out across open country. Adam led them on a circuitous route, sometimes doubling back, other times splitting off in unexpected directions. To Daisy, who had never ventured far from town, every ridge and valley looked the same in the darkness, but Adam moved with the confidence of someone who knew the land intimately. "How much farther?" Daisy asked during a brief rest to water the horses, her body aching from hours in the saddle. "Another day's ride at least," Adam replied, scanning the horizon. "We'll need to find shelter soon. Can't risk a fire tonight, but you need rest." They found a small cave set into the side of a rocky hill, barely more than an indentation, but enough to provide some protection from the increasingly cold night air. Adam insisted Daisy take the single blanket he had managed to bring, despite her protests. "I'm used to sleeping rough," he assured her. "You're not." Too exhausted to argue, Daisy wrapped herself in the blanket, the hard ground beneath her a far cry from the comfortable bed at Adam's ranch. Despite her fatigue, sleep eluded her, her mind replaying the events that had led to this moment. "Adam," she whispered into the darkness, "I'm sorry for all this trouble." There was a pause, then his voice came quietly from near the mouth of the cave where he kept watch. "You've got nothing to apologize for. But your ranch, your home, it's just a place," he interrupted gently. "Can always build another." "Why are you doing all this for me?" The question had been building inside her for days, and now, in the intimate darkness of their hiding place, she finally gave it voice. Adam was silent for so long that Daisy thought he might have fallen asleep. Then, so softly she had to strain to hear him, he said, "Because you deserve better than being another victim of Victor Blackstone. Because when I found you that night, looking so brave despite your fear, something in me." He trailed off, then continued more firmly, "Because it's the right thing to do." But Daisy had heard the unfinished thought, had felt the weight of meaning in his hesitation. In the darkness, she smiled to herself, a small warmth blooming in her chest despite the danger surrounding them. They set out before dawn, moving steadily through terrain that grew increasingly rugged. Adam remained vigilant, frequently stopping to listen or study the horizon, but there was no sign of pursuit. "Think we lost them?" Daisy asked hopefully as they paused to rest the horses around midday. "For now," Adam replied, though his expression remained cautious. "But Blackstone's not one to give up easily, and if they've brought trackers—" He didn't need to finish the thought. Daisy understood the implication their lead was temporary at best. They continued on, the landscape gradually changing as they rode. The sparse vegetation of Adams Valley gave way to more densely wooded areas, providing better cover but making travel slower. By late afternoon, dark clouds had gathered on the horizon, promising rain. "Might be a blessing," Adam observed. "Rain will wash away any tracks we've left." But the approaching storm brought other concerns. The temperature dropped noticeably as the clouds rolled in, and by the time the first raindrops began to fall, both riders were shivering. "We need shelter," Adam decided as the rain intensified. "There's an old line shack about 2 miles from here. It's not much, but it'll keep us dry." The shack turned out to be a small, dilapidated cabin, clearly abandoned for some time but with its roof still mostly intact. Adam led the horses into a lean-to attached to one side while Daisy ducked into the main structure, finding it dusty but dry. "Who lived here?" she asked as Adam joined her, shaking water from his hat. "No one for years," he replied, moving around the small space with familiarity, checking the old stone fireplace and the single window with its shutters hanging askew. "Used to be a boundary marker for the old Spanish land grant. Cowboys would use it when working this section of range." With night approaching and the storm showing no signs of abating, Adam decided to risk a small fire. "Smoke will be dispersed by the rain," he explained as he carefully arranged kindling in the fireplace. "And we both need to warm up." The tiny flame he coaxed to life seemed miraculous in the gloom of the cabin. Daisy huddled close to it, extending her hands gratefully toward the warmth while Adam retrieved supplies from their saddlebags. "Not exactly a feast," he apologized as he offered her jerky, hard biscuits and a bit of cheese. "But it'll keep body and soul together." They ate in companionable silence, the patter of rain on the roof and the occasional rumble of distant thunder the only sounds. As the fire cast dancing shadows across the walls of the small cabin, Daisy was struck by the strange intimacy of their situation, two virtual strangers bound together by circumstance and danger, sharing this tiny shelter against the elements and those who would do them harm. When Adam spoke again, his voice was thoughtful. "What will you do? After we reach Jenkins Station, I mean." Daisy considered the question. "I haven't thought that far ahead. Find work somewhere, I suppose, though teaching might be difficult without references." "You could go back east," Adam suggested, "to your family in Boston." The idea held little appeal. "There's nothing for me there anymore, and She hesitated, then admitted, "I've grown to love the West despite everything." Adam nodded, understanding in his eyes. "It gets in your blood." "The space, the freedom of it." "Yes, exactly." She smiled, then grew serious again. "But what about you? Will you go back to your ranch after you've seen me safely to the station?" A shadow crossed his face. "Not right away. First I need to deal with Blackstone." "Adam," Daisy said, alarm rising in her voice, "you can't confront him directly. It's too dangerous." "I don't intend to get myself killed," he assured her. "But I can't let this go on. He's hurt too many people, Abby, you who knows how many others." "Then let the law handle it." "The law?" Adam laughed bitterly. "His cousin's the sheriff, and he has judges and politicians in his pocket all the way to the territorial capital." "There must be another way," Daisy insisted, frightened by the determination she saw in his eyes. Adam's expression softened as he looked at her across the fire. "I appreciate your concern, but this is something I have to do for Abby's memory, for your safety, for my own peace of mind." Daisy wanted to argue further, but the set of his jaw told her it would be futile. Instead, she asked, "What was she like?" "Your sister." The question seemed to catch him off guard, but then a small smile played at his lips. "Abby, she was radiant, always laughing, always seeing the best in people, stubborn as the day is long when she set her mind to something." His voice grew softer. "She would have liked you." "I wish I could have met her," Daisy said sincerely. "Me too." Adam's eyes held hers across the flames, something unspoken passing between them. Then he stood abruptly. "Better get some rest. We've got a long ride tomorrow if this rain lets up." Daisy lay awake long after Adam had settled himself against the far wall of the cabin, listening to the rain and thinking about the man who had risked so much to help her. There was a depth to him that she was only beginning to understand, grief and rage carefully controlled beneath his calm exterior, a sense of honor that ran bone deep, and something else, something tender that emerged in unguarded moments. She was falling in love with Adam Sloane, she realized, with a mixture of wonder and trepidation. And if the way he sometimes looked at her was any indication, he might be feeling the same impossible pull. But with Victor Blackstone's shadow still looming over them both, was there any chance for such feelings to grow into something more? Or were they destined to part ways once she reached the safety of Jenkins Station? With these questions circling in her mind, Daisy finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, the fire's glow gradually fading to embers as the night wore on. The storm passed during the night, leaving a washed, clean world of glistening foliage and mud-slick trails. They set out at first light, Adam leading them deeper into the forested hills, away from the more traveled routes. "Should reach the station by nightfall if we keep a steady pace," he told her as they navigated a narrow ridge. "Old man Jenkins keeps to himself, but he's reliable." "You'll be safe there," Daisy nodded, trying to ignore the pang she felt at the finality in his voice. "And then you'll go after Blackstone." It wasn't a question, but Adam answered anyway. "I've been gathering evidence against him for years. Statements from people who have seen his cruelty, documents showing how he's manipulated property rights, even testimony about Abby's death from a maid who was too frightened to speak up at the time. With the right pressure, we might finally get justice." "We," Daisy echoed. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Martha's been helping, so have a few others who have suffered under Blackstone's rule. You're not the first woman he's fixated on, nor the first person he's tried to destroy." The revelation that Adam had been working methodically toward Blackstone's downfall for years was both reassuring and concerning. It meant he wasn't simply rushing headlong into revenge, but it also underscored how deeply personal this fight was for him. They rode in companionable silence for hours, the terrain gradually flattening out as they approached the border region. By mid-afternoon, Daisy could see distant mountains rising blue and hazy on the horizon, the natural boundary marking the edge of the territory. "Jenkins Station is just beyond that ridge," Adam said, pointing to a low rise ahead. "Another hour's ride at most." Relief and regret mingled in Daisy's heart. Safety was near, but so was separation from the man who had come to mean so much to her in such a short time. They had just started down the slope toward a small valley when Adam suddenly reined in his horse, his body tensing. "What is it?" Daisy asked, immediately alert to the change in his demeanor. "Smoke," he said quietly, nodding toward a thin gray column rising in the distance exactly where the station should be. "Too much for just a cooking fire." Daisy felt a chill that had nothing to do with the afternoon breeze. "Could be anything," she suggested, not believing it herself. Adam's expression was grim. "Could be, but we approach careful just the same." He reached into his saddlebag and withdrew his rifle. "Stay behind me, and if I tell you to run, you ride hard for those hills to the east. Don't look back, don't wait for me. Understand?" The seriousness in his voice frightened her more than the smoke. "Adam, promise me, Daisy." "I promise," she whispered, though the thought of leaving him behind was almost unbearable. They proceeded cautiously, using the natural contours of the land for cover as they approached the station. As they drew closer, Daisy could see that her worst fears were realized. The main building was ablaze, flames licking at what remained of the roof while smoke billowed into the clear sky. "Blackstone," Adam breathed, the single word laden with fury and certainty. "He must have gotten here ahead of us. But how could he have known?" Daisy's mind raced with possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. Someone talked, or he made an educated guess based on Martha's connection. Adam scanned the area around the burning building, his experienced eyes searching for any sign of danger. Don't see anyone moving. Might have already gone. What about Martha's brother, the people who lived here? Adam's silence was answer enough. If Blackstone's men had been thorough, and they usually were, there might be no survivors to question. They approached the station from the side, staying under cover until they were certain no one lay in wait. The heat from the fire was intense even at a distance, making it impossible to get close to the main building. A smaller structure, likely a bunkhouse, stood nearby, apparently untouched by the flames. "Wait here," Adam instructed, dismounting and moving silently toward the bunkhouse, rifle ready. Daisy held her breath, watching him disappear inside. Moments later he emerged, his expression confirming her fears. "Old man Jenkins is dead," he reported grimly as he returned to her side. "Shot. Looks like it happened hours ago." Daisy pressed a hand to her mouth, horror and guilt washing over her. Another life lost because of Victor Blackstone's obsession. "It's my fault," she whispered. "If I hadn't..." "Don't," Adam cut her off firmly. "This is Blackstone's doing, not yours." He gazed at the burning building, jaw tight with suppressed rage. "But it means we need a new plan. They're either waiting for us somewhere nearby, or they've set up an ambush along the likely routes away from here. What do we do?" Daisy asked, fighting to keep her voice steady despite her growing fear. Adam considered their options, his mind working through scenarios even as he kept a vigilant watch on their surroundings. "We can't stay here," he decided finally. "There's a mining settlement about 20 miles east, mostly Chinese workers, but they might take us in for a night. After that..." He shook his head, "one step at a time." As they prepared to leave the devastation of Jenkins Station behind, Adam suddenly stiffened, his gaze fixed on something in the distance. "Riders," he said tersely, "coming fast from the north." Daisy followed his gaze, her heart sinking as she made out the dark shapes of mounted men against the horizon. "Blackstone's men, most likely," Adam confirmed. "At least 6 of them. We need to move now." They spurred their horses into motion, heading southeast toward the rugged hills Adam had mentioned earlier. The open ground between their position and the shelter of the hills left them exposed, but it was their only chance to outpace their pursuers. "Ride," Adam urged as the sound of hoofbeats grew louder behind them. "Don't look back." Daisy clung to her horse's mane, the wind whipping tears from her eyes as they galloped across the uneven terrain. She could hear shouts behind them now, punctuated by the sharp crack of gunfire. A bullet whizzed past her ear, too close for comfort. The hills loomed larger as they approached, offering the promise of cover among the rocks and scattered trees. Just a little further. A cry of pain made Daisy turn despite Adam's warning. To her horror, she saw him slump forward in his saddle, one hand clutching his side. "Adam," she screamed, pulling her horse around. "Keep going," he shouted, his face pale but determined as he straightened with visible effort. "I'm right behind you." More gunfire erupted as they reached the first slopes of the hills. Adam guided them into a narrow ravine, the steep walls providing some protection from their pursuers' bullets. They pushed deeper into the maze of rock formations, the sounds of pursuit growing fainter as the terrain became too treacherous for headlong pursuit. Finally, in a small box canyon screened by dense brush, Adam called a halt. He dismounted stiffly, his face gray with pain, a dark stain spreading across his shirt. "Let me see," Daisy insisted, hurrying to his side as he leaned heavily against a boulder. "It's just a graze," he tried to assure her, but the grimace that accompanied his words belied the claim. Daisy gently moved his hand aside to reveal an ugly furrow along his ribs where a bullet had sliced through flesh. "You need a doctor." "No time," he said through gritted teeth. "They'll be combing these hills for us. Need to keep moving once it's dark." "Not with you bleeding like this," Daisy countered firmly. She rummaged in her bag for the small medical kit Martha had insisted she take. "At least let me bind it properly." Adam submitted to her ministrations with reluctant grace, sitting still as she cleaned the wound with water from their canteen and bound it tightly with strips torn from her petticoat. The injury wasn't life-threatening if infection could be prevented, but it was clearly painful and would limit his mobility. "Thank you," he said quietly when she had finished. "You've got steady hands." "I've had practice," Daisy replied, thinking of the many scraped knees and minor injuries she had tended as a teacher. "Now rest if you can. I'll keep watch." Adam looked as though he wanted to argue, but exhaustion and blood loss were taking their toll. He settled back against the rock, his hand never far from his gun despite his obvious fatigue. Daisy took up position near the entrance to their small refuge. The revolver Adam had given her clutched in nervous hands. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on her shoulders. Adam had risked everything to protect her, and now his life depended on her vigilance. As the light began to fade, bringing the relative safety of darkness, Daisy reflected on how completely her life had changed in the span of 2 weeks. From respectable schoolteacher to fugitive, from independent woman to what? Someone who cared deeply, perhaps too deeply, for a man she barely knew yet understood instinctively. The sound of Adam stirring behind her interrupted her thoughts. He moved to join her, his movements careful but steadier than she had expected. "Any sign of them?" he asked, scanning the approaching darkness. "Nothing," she reported, "but I heard horses in the distance about an hour ago." Adam nodded. "They'll be setting up a perimeter trying to flush us out." He glanced at the darkening sky. "We'll wait another hour, then move east under cover of night. There's a ravine that leads out of these hills toward the settlement I mentioned." "You need rest," Daisy protested. "The wound will have to wait," he finished firmly. "Blackstone's men won't give up, and we can't stay here without supplies." Daisy knew he was right, but concern for his condition warred with the practical necessity of their situation. "At least let me check the bandage before we go." As she carefully adjusted the makeshift dressing, her fingers brushed against his skin, warm despite the cooling evening air. Adam caught her hand suddenly, holding it against his chest where she could feel the strong, steady beat of his heart. "Daisy," he said quietly, her name like a prayer on his lips. "If anything happens, don't," she interrupted, afraid of what might follow. "Nothing's going to happen. We're going to reach that settlement, get help, and then—" "And then," he prompted when she didn't continue. Daisy met his gaze, all the unspoken feelings between them suddenly too powerful to ignore. "And then we'll face whatever comes next, together." The word hung in the air between them, full of promise and uncertainty. Adam's eyes searched hers, looking for reassurance or perhaps permission. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned forward until his lips met hers in a kiss so gentle it made her heart ache. It was a moment suspended in time, tender, questioning, and over far too soon as Adam drew back, his expression a mixture of wonder and concern. "I shouldn't have," he began. "Yes, you should," Daisy interrupted, surprising herself with her boldness. "And you should do it again before we have to face whatever's waiting for us out there." A smile, rare and beautiful, transformed Adam's face as he pulled her close again, this kiss deeper and more certain than the first. For a few precious moments, the danger surrounding them receded, leaving only the connection they had forged through shared peril and growing affection. When they finally parted, the night had fully descended, stars appearing in the velvet darkness above. It was time to move. "Ready?" Adam asked softly, his hand finding hers in the darkness. "Ready," Daisy confirmed, drawing strength from his touch and the memory of his kiss. They mounted their horses silently and slipped out of the small canyon, every sense alert for signs of pursuit as they navigated the treacherous terrain by starlight. Adam led them unerringly through the maze of rocky outcroppings, following a course that seemed random to Daisy but gradually brought them to the eastern edge of the hills. The mining settlement Adam had mentioned came into view shortly before dawn, a cluster of simple structures nestled in a small valley, smoke already rising from morning cooking fires. As they approached cautiously, Daisy could see that most of the buildings were indeed occupied by Chinese workers, with a few other structures that appeared to serve the small community. "Will they help us?" she whispered as they paused on a ridge overlooking the settlement. "Depends," Adam replied. "Blackstone's reach is long, but he's made enemies of the Chinese by driving them off claims near Silvercreek. If we're lucky, they'll at least give us food and a place to rest before we move on." Their reception was initially wary, the residents of the small community regarding the blood-stained cowboy and his disheveled companion with suspicion. But when Adam mentioned Victor Blackstone's name, followed by a few phrases in halting Chinese, their attitude shifted perceptibly. An older man stepped forward, introducing himself as Lai Wai, the unofficial leader of the settlement. "Blackstone," he said, his accent thick but his meaning clear. "Bad man, take land, kill people." "Yes," Adam agreed solemnly. "He's hunting us now, we need shelter just for today." Lai Wai studied them thoughtfully, then nodded. "You hide. We help." They were led to a small storage shed behind one of the larger buildings, crude but clean and out of sight from anyone passing through the settlement. A young woman brought them bowls of rice and tea, while an older man who seemed to have some medical knowledge examined Adam's wound, applying a pungent herbal paste before rebandaging it. "Thank you," Daisy said when they were finally left alone. "For everything." Adam leaned back against the wall of the shed, exhaustion evident in every line of his body despite his attempt to hide it. "Should be me thanking you. You kept your head back there." "I was terrified," she admitted. "Being brave isn't about not being scared," he told her, his eyes soft as they rested on her face. "It's about doing what needs doing anyway." Daisy moved to sit beside him, careful not to disturb his injured side. "What happens now?" Adam's expression turned thoughtful. "Lai Wai says there's a U.S. Marshal passing through tomorrow, heading back to the territorial capital. If we can get word to him about Blackstone, show him the evidence I've gathered." "Would that be enough?" Daisy asked, hope flaring for the first time in days. "Maybe." Marshall's answer to federal authority, not local. Blackstone has less influence there. He reached for her hand, his fingers twining with hers. "It's worth a try, better than running forever." The possibility of an end to their flight, of justice finally catching up to Victor Blackstone, was almost too much to hope for. Yet as Daisy rested her head against Adam's shoulder, allowing exhaustion to claim her at last, she permitted herself to imagine a future beyond survival, a future where they might discover what had begun between them without the shadow of fear hanging over their heads. They slept through most of the day, the safety of the mining settlement and sheer fatigue from their ordeal combining to drop them into deep, restorative slumber. When Daisy awoke, the light filtering through the cracks in the shed walls had taken on the golden quality of late afternoon. Adam was already awake, looking considerably better than he had that morning. The Chinese healer's remedies seemed to have worked wonders on his wound, reducing both pain and inflammation. Lai Y says the marshal should arrive by nightfall, he informed her as she straightened her disheveled clothing as best she could. Name's James Foster. Has a reputation for being tough but fair. Do you think he'll believe us over Blackstone? Daisy couldn't help but worry. Their story would sound fantastical to someone who didn't know Victor Blackstone's true nature. He'll believe evidence, Adam replied confidently. And I've got plenty, including this. He withdrew a small, leather-bound journal from inside his shirt. Abby kept a diary. Detailed everything Blackstone did, how he changed once they were married. I found it hidden in her things after she died. Daisy's eyes widened. You've had that all this time, Adam nodded. Been adding to it statements from others, documents showing Blackstone's illegal dealings. Was planning to take it to the federal authorities eventually, once I had enough to ensure he couldn't wriggle free. Your situation just moved up the timeline. The journal represented years of careful work, of patience and determination in the face of grief and injustice. It was, Daisy realized, a testament to the kind of man Adam Sloane truly was, not driven by blind revenge, but by a deep-seated need to see justice done, no matter how long it took. When Lai Y came to inform them of Marshal Foster's arrival, the sun had just set, casting long shadows across the small settlement. Adam insisted on meeting the lawman alone first, concerned that Blackstone's fabricated charges might compel Foster to arrest Daisy on sight. If he doesn't believe me, you'll still have a chance to get away, he explained in response to her protests. I'm not leaving without you, Daisy said firmly. We face this together, remember. The determination in her eyes must have convinced him, for Adam merely nodded, taking her hand as they followed Lai Y to the main building where the marshal waited. James Foster proved to be a tall, weathered man with keen eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. He listened without interruption as Adam laid out their situation, presenting the journal and other evidence he had gathered against Victor Blackstone over the years. These are serious accusations, Sloane, Foster said when Adam had finished. Blackstone's a powerful man in these parts. Which is why he's gotten away with it for so long, Adam replied evenly. But the evidence is there, if someone's willing to look. Foster turned his attention to Daisy. And you, Miss Taylor, Blackstone claims you stole valuable jewelry from his home before fleeing Silvercreek. I've never set foot in his house, Daisy stated firmly. He fabricated those charges after I refused his proposal and She touched her cheek where the bruise had faded but not completely disappeared. He showed his true colors. The marshal's eyes narrowed as he noted the faint discoloration. I see. He leafed through the journal again, pausing at entries that seemed to particularly catch his attention. Blackstone's men burned down Jenkins Station, he said finally. Found what was left of it and old man Jenkins on my way here. Adam and Daisy exchanged glances. We saw, Adam confirmed grimly. Barely escaped ourselves. Foster's expression hardened. Murder of a station keeper's a federal offense, combined with these other accusations. He closed the journal decisively. I've had my suspicions about Blackstone for some time, never had enough to act on, until now. You believe us? Daisy asked, hardly daring to hope. I believe in evidence, Foster replied, and I believe in justice even when it's inconvenient for the powerful. He stood, towering over them both. I'll take this journal to the circuit judge in the capital. In the meantime, you two should stay out of sight. Blackstone's still got men searching for you. We can't hide forever, Adam pointed out. No need, Foster assured him. I'm sending a wire to the territorial governor tonight. By this time tomorrow, there should be a warrant for Blackstone's arrest instead of yours, Miss Taylor. The relief that swept through Daisy was so intense she nearly swayed on her feet. Adam's arm slipped around her waist, steadying her, his own expression reflecting the cautious hope she felt. "What happens then?" he asked. "Then," Foster said with grim satisfaction, "I go back to Silvercreek and arrest Victor Blackstone for murder, attempted murder, fraud, and whatever else the evidence supports. And you too can stop running." The marshal departed within the hour, the precious journal securely in his possession, and a promise to send word as soon as the new warrants were issued. Lai insisted Adam and Daisy remain in the settlement until they received confirmation that it was safe to emerge from hiding. "Blackstone men still look," he warned them. "Better wait." They passed the night in the small shed, more comfortable now with extra blankets and food provided by the generous residents of the mining community. Despite their improved circumstances, neither could fully relax, too aware of how close they had come to disaster and how much still depended on factors beyond their control. "What will you do?" Adam asked softly as they sat side by side in the darkness. "When this is over, I mean." If Foster succeeds, Daisy considered the question. "I don't know. Teaching in Silvercreek isn't an option anymore, even if Blackstone is arrested." "You could go anywhere," Adam pointed out. "Start fresh in another town." "I could," she agreed. Then, gathering her courage, she asked, "What about you?" Adam was quiet for a moment. Never thought much beyond bringing Blackstone to justice. Spent so long focused on that, didn't leave room for other plans. Daisy's heart beat faster as she ventured, "Perhaps you could make new plans now." His hand found hers in the darkness, fingers intertwining with gentle pressure. "Perhaps I could." There was a smile in his voice, audible even though she couldn't see his face clearly. "Might need some help with that, though. Never been much good at planning for happiness." "I'd like to help," Daisy whispered, leaning into his solid warmth. "If you'd let me." In answer, Adam's arm circled her shoulders, drawing her closer as he pressed a kiss to her temple. "I'd like that very much." They spent the following day in a state of tense anticipation, waiting for word from Marshal Foster. The residents of the settlement went about their business, but there was an undercurrent of alertness, sentries posted to watch for any sign of Blackstone's men approaching. It was late afternoon when Lai appeared at the door of the shed, his usually impassive face alight with excitement. "Marshal, send message," he announced, holding up a folded paper. "For you." Adam took the note, reading it quickly before passing it to Daisy, a slow smile spreading across his face. "It's done," he said. "Foster got the warrants. Blackstone's been arrested, along with his cousin the sheriff and several of his men." Daisy read the brief message herself, hardly able to believe the words before her eyes. "Is it really over?" she asked, voice trembling with emotion. "Not completely," Adam cautioned. "There'll be a trial. We'll both need to testify, but yes, the running is over." The realization took a moment to fully sink in. After days of fear and flight, of uncertainty and danger, the immediate threat was lifted. Victor Blackstone was in custody, his power broken, his reign of terror ended. Daisy threw her arms around Adam's neck, heedless of propriety or his healing wound, overcome with relief and joy. He caught her close, his laughter mingling with hers as they celebrated this unexpected victory. "We did it," she murmured against his shoulder. "We did," he agreed, pulling back enough to look into her eyes. "Together." The trial of Victor Blackstone became the sensation of the territory, drawing curious onlookers from miles around to the courthouse in the capital. Daisy and Adam both testified, along with dozens of others who had suffered under Blackstone's corrupt influence. Miners forced off their claims, women he had harassed, businessmen he had ruined. Most damning of all was Abigail Sloane's diary. its pages detailing the psychological and physical abuse she had endured during her brief marriage, culminating in entries that clearly indicated her fear for her life in the days before her death. Through it all, Adam remained a steady presence at Daisy's side, his quiet strength helping her face the ordeal of confronting her persecutor in the witness stand. When Blackstone's attorney tried to intimidate her, questioning her character and motives, Adam's unwavering support gave her the courage to stand her ground. Did you, or did you not encourage Mr. Blackstone's attentions, Miss Taylor? The defense attorney demanded. I did not, Daisy replied firmly. I declined his invitations politely but clearly from the beginning. Yet you accepted expensive gifts from him. I accepted flowers once, which I believed to be a gesture of appreciation for teaching his nephew. When I realized his intentions were more personal, I returned the next gift he sent and made my disinterest clear. The attorney's attempts to paint her as a fortune hunter, who had led Blackstone on, fell flat in the face of her dignified testimony, and the corroborating statements from others in Silvercreek who had witnessed Blackstone's increasingly obsessive behavior. When the verdict came down guilty on all counts, it felt like the closing of a chapter that had been left painfully open for too long. Victor Blackstone was sentenced to hang for the murder of Abigail Sloane and Old Man Jenkins, with additional prison terms for his other crimes that he would never live to serve. As they left the courthouse for the final time, Adam took Daisy's hand, leading her away from the crowds and reporters who had followed the sensational case. It's really over, he said quietly as they walked through the busy streets of the territorial capital. After all this time. Does it feel like justice? Daisy asked, knowing how long he had worked toward this moment, how deeply personal it was for him. Adam considered the question before answering. Not satisfaction exactly. Nothing can bring Abby back, but peace maybe, closure. He glanced down at her. And hope for what comes next. They had spoken often during the weeks of the trial about the future, about possibilities neither had dared consider while Blackstone remained a threat. Now those conversations took on new urgency, new meaning. I've been offered a teaching position here in the capital, Daisy told him as they reached the small park at the center of town. The school board was impressed by my testimony, apparently. That's wonderful, Adam said sincerely. You deserve it after everything you've been through. I haven't accepted yet, she added, watching his face carefully. I wanted to know your plans first. A smile touched his lips. My plans depend quite a bit on yours as it happens. Oh, Daisy's heart quickened. Adam drew her to a quiet corner of the park, taking both her hands in his. I sold the ranch, he announced. Got a fair price, too. Thought I might buy some land near here, start fresh, if that would suit you. Are you asking me something, Adam Sloane? Daisy prompted gently when he hesitated. The uncertainty in his expression gave way to determination as he reached into his pocket, withdrawing a small velvet box. I am. Been carrying this around for weeks, waiting for the right moment. He opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant ring, a small diamond catching the afternoon sunlight. Daisy Taylor, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Joy surged through her, bright and beautiful. Yes, she answered without hesitation. Yes, I will. The kiss they shared was a promise, a beginning rather than an ending. When they finally drew apart, both slightly breathless, Adam's smile was more relaxed than she had ever seen it. I love you, he said simply. Have since that first night in the rain, I think. I love you too, Daisy replied, marveling at how naturally the words came, how true they felt. Though I believe it took me until that awful night at Jenkins Station to admit it to myself. Adam laughed softly as he slipped the ring onto her finger. Nothing like mortal danger to clarify one's feelings. I'd prefer less dramatic revelations in the future if you don't mind, she teased, admiring the way the ring caught the light. I'll do my best, he promised, drawing her close again. They were married a month later in a simple ceremony, attended by those who had supported them through the ordeal: Marshall Foster, Martha Jenkins, Lai Y, and representatives from the mining settlement, and a few others who had testified against Blackstone. True to his word, Adam purchased land outside the territorial capital, building a comfortable house with plenty of room for the family they both hoped to have. Daisy took the teaching position she had been offered, her natural talent for education earning her the respect and affection of her students and their parents alike. And if she sometimes woke in the night, heart racing from dreams of pursuit and danger, Adam was always there to hold her close, to remind her with gentle words and tender touches that those days were behind them. The shadows of Victor Blackstone gradually receded from their lives, replaced by the joy of building something new together. 5 years later, Daisy stood on the porch of their home, watching as Adam taught their 4-year-old son Thomas to ride his first pony, their 2-year-old daughter Alina clapping her hands in excitement from her perch on a nearby fence. "Careful, Tom," Daisy called as the boy bounced enthusiastically in the small saddle. "Remember what your father taught you about holding the reins." "I've got him," Adam assured her, his hand steady on the pony's bridle as he led the animal in a gentle circle. "He's a natural, just like his mama." Daisy smiled at the compliment, one hand resting on the gentle swell of her belly where their third child was beginning to make its presence known. The life they had built together was richer and more fulfilling than anything she could have imagined that stormy night when a quiet cowboy had appeared out of the darkness to save her. As Adam lifted their son from the pony and set him on solid ground, Thomas immediately ran to Daisy, face flushed with excitement. "Did you see, Mama? I was riding all by myself." "I saw," she confirmed, bending to embrace him. "You were very brave." Adam joined them on the porch, little Alina now perched on his shoulders. "Bravery runs in the family," he remarked with a wink at Daisy. Later, with the children finally asleep after stories and prayers, Adam and Daisy sat together on the porch swing, watching the stars emerge in the clear night sky. His arm rested comfortably around her shoulders, her head leaning against him in a posture that had become as natural as breathing over the years. "Happy?" Adam asked softly, the question a ritual between them, a reminder of all they had overcome to reach this peaceful moment. "Completely," Daisy answered, turning to meet his gaze. "Are you?" The smile that transformed his face, once so rare, now a familiar sight, was answer enough, but he spoke the words anyway. "More than I ever thought possible." As they sat together in the gentle darkness, the future stretching before them full of promise and possibility, Daisy offered a silent prayer of gratitude for the storm that had driven her into the night, for the cowboy who had found her, and for the love that had given them both the strength to stand against the darkness and find their way to the light. In the distance, a coyote called to its mate, a lonely sound made beautiful by the answering call that followed two voices finding each other across the vastness of the desert night, much as Adam and Daisy had found each other against all odds in a world that had tried to keep them apart.